8:30 a.m. football. That's right. Packers and pancakes. Biscuits and bakhtiari. And an 8:30 kickoff. Which means there is no conceivable way I could put my toddler down for a nap anytime during the game. I'm scared. Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am your host, John Del Rey. Thanks for joining me on another episode. Today being Wednesday is going to be our Wednesday Wellness Check, where we're going to take a look at all of the injuries for both the Packers and Giants right before they get on the planes and head off to London tomorrow. A bunch of injuries to talk about on both sides of the ball. Luckily, a lot more on the Giants side. But today we're going to go over that, and then I'm going to answer some questions, go over a couple of transactions that occurred yesterday. Before I totally dive in, hit like, share, subscribe on this video. Make sure you pass it around, and also head over to our Facebook page, like our brand new Facebook page, Lombardi Time Brews. There I'm posting different types of content every day, so make sure that you check that out. So diving in to the Wednesday Wellness Checkup, and for the Packers side, luckily it's not that long. Really, the only one who was a straight-up do not practice today was Adrian Amos. This is not at all surprising coming after the concussion. We know that the NFL and teams specifically are going to be more cautious with concussions, given everything that happened with Tua. We know, based upon what a lot of teams have said, that the flight to London and getting off schedule can wreak havoc on already existing injuries. Matt LaFleur talked earlier this week about a few special accommodations that they're making for Robert Tonyan, Elton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari, guys who have these knee injuries that are going to be on a plane for a lot longer than they're typically used to. And Adrian Amos concussions are certainly no exception to that. At this point, I would actually be fairly surprised if Adrian Amos plays. It's a 1-week turnaround with the travel, concussion, circumstances with the NFL. I don't know. Maybe he's farther along in testing. I mean, John Runyon Jr. was also a DNP on the Wednesday of his concussion, going from week 1 to week 2. So Amos, is it possible? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think he plays. In conjunction with that, I think we see Micah Abernathy then get elevated. That's just a guess. Because as I'm going to talk about in a little bit, Rudy Ford filled in admirably. No doubt about it. Even LaFleur said so in his press conference today that Ford did a great job jumping in as safety 3. The problem is special teams certainly noticed his absence. So are they going to keep going with Ford if Amos can't go? We don't know. Stay tuned. Then with limited practices, this list is a little bit longer. However, there's not exactly a lot of concern with anyone on this list. The limited practice list is David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Jair Alexander, Alan Lazard, Tariq Carpenter, Josh Myers, and Devontae Wyatt. That's really not a bad list. Now, Myers and Wyatt are newer to the list, but nonetheless, I haven't seen anything that says that we should be concerned about whether they play in London or not. David Bakhtiari played all but I think it was 3 snaps this last Sunday, and apparently, given everything that's been reported this week, his knee is responding as well as could be hoped. Now, will that stay the case again with this long flight to London? We don't know, but as of right now, it's looking really good. So ultimately, I think you have to be really happy with where the Packers are at health-wise, certainly in a better position than they were a few weeks ago. One other injury note for the Packers, Kylan Hill, now that week 4 is complete. Kylan Hill is now able to return to practice from the physically unable to perform list, but he's not returning yet. LaFleur said that today that he was not going to be practicing today. He's not quite ready to get off the list yet. So we'll see where that goes. But as of right now, Patrick Taylor is RB3. Kylan Hill just not quite ready yet. We'll see when he is. Now, turning the page over to the Giants, they have a much longer injury report. And I'm not going to go through all of it right now, because they're the opposing team. We'll see on Friday a much more realistic gauge as to where they're at, assuming they're going to keep to a regular schedule, even with London. But nonetheless, this list is lengthy, and it's a number of impactful players. For instance, do not practices was their backup quarterback Tyrod Taylor, wide receiver Richie James, and wide receiver Kenny Golladay. Moving over to the limiteds, you've got stud rookie offensive tackle Evan Neal, quarterback Daniel Jones, who, by all accounts today, according to the Giants beat writers, actually look like he's trending in the way of playing, which you would have asked on Monday or Sunday, is that possible? And they would have said, no way. But he practiced today, at least in a limited capacity, and he looks like he's on his way to playing against Green Bay. Looks like Green Bay won't get another backup quarterback. And then also, defensive lineman Leonard Williams and wide receiver Kadarius Toney were all limited. Now, this is a team that also just lost Sterling Shepard to an ACL injury. Wan'Dale Robinson, another wide receiver on this team, is supposedly potentially dealing with an MCL injury, meaning we're probably not going to see him. So, lots and lots of injuries across this team for the New York Giants. One of the rationale pieces that the beat writers did offer for Daniel Jones to play is that yesterday the Giants brought in a number of quarterbacks to practice or to try out. They also were just keeping one in a hotel just on kind of emergency reserve. And today they told that hotel one to go home. They didn't sign any of the ones yet. That certainly looks like Daniel Jones is going to be playing in London. But nonetheless, is his mobility going to be limited? Is he going to be a slightly different quarterback? Not that Daniel Jones is this all-world quarterback we need to be worried about, but he does have some wheels. I mean, he's Danny Dimes for a reason. So, how much this ankle injury of his affects him, we'll find out. I would think it's still going to be enough to be an issue. So, moving on to a few transactions, just continuing with the news. Yesterday, the Packers did bring in a bunch of players to work out. They were all offensive linemen. Makes all the sense in the world since Caleb Jones has been moved to the NFI list with his illness. There's an open spot on the practice squad. Makes a lot of sense to bring in another O-lineman if Caleb Jones is missing a substantial amount of time. But of course, Caleb Jones moving to the NFI list also opened up an active spot on the 53. And the Packers filled that yesterday too, by signing linebacker Eric Wilson. Now, they signed him off of the New Orleans Saints practice squad, but he had played for the Eagles, Texans, and most notably for most of his career, the Vikings. So why did the Packers bring in a linebacker? Well, I think it's actually kind of simple. He weighs about 229 pounds. He's not an overly large individual. At that weight, he's more than likely not playing edge in a 3-4 system. So, he's an inside linebacker in this system, right? Okay, makes a lot of sense. His career high is 4 sacks. There was one particular season where he had 8 tackles for loss. He seems, by all accounts, to be a pretty good run-stopping linebacker with some pass rush prowess. That's Chris Barnes. Chris Barnes, I think, was still a part of the plan. Yes, they drafted Quay Walker to be the guy next to Devondre Campbell. I don't think there's much doubting that. But I don't think 4 to 5 weeks into his rookie season, they were banking on Quay Walker playing nearly 100% of snaps like he is. There was still a role for Chris Barnes on this team. Given Barnes' strength, given what Barnes does well, it probably was going to be in the run defense area. And because Barnes has been hurt, Quay Walker has just kind of assumed that as a rookie too. And we've seen him at times get lost. So does Eric Wilson now solve that? I mean, not completely. He's still relatively a journeyman linebacker. But it helps. Pair that with the fact that he's logged nearly 1,200 career special team snaps. Across the 5 years of his career, His average grade, according to PFF, on special teams across those 1,200 snaps, 79. Guy's good at special teams. And of course, we know this is a continued point of emphasis for the Green Bay Packers. He also had a 9.36 relative athletic score. Perfect. That fits the Packer mold, no doubt about it. Now, the question is, because I saw a lot of talk on Twitter about this, is it possible that he's going to play edge? Well, no, at 230 pounds, probably not. Because we know Jonathan Garvin has not been playing up to snuff as edge rusher 3. Rookie Kingsley Enagbare has done some really nice things on tape. He has a nice collection of pass rush moves. But he's not completely setting an edge in the run game yet. He's still developing, as a mid-round pick should. Jonathan Garvin hasn't been up to snuff, and we know Tipa's there mostly as a special teamer. So where's the depth at edge right now? And we knew coming into the season that this was a major area of concern. What about edge depth? Well, I think a more likely theory than Eric Walker playing edge is that in some of the snaps that he's going to take from Quay at inside linebacker, we see Quay shift out. Quay has more of the build of an edge. He has more of the athletic traits of an edge. Comparing them to Wilson, not just comparing them in general. He is an inside linebacker, but compared to Wilson, he's more of an edge than Wilson is. But then Quay Walker in minicamp, too, took some of these edge snaps. They obviously had something in mind. And I wonder if now we're going to see it because Eric Wilson will allow them to do it until Chris Barnes' return. So, diving into a couple of questions now. These are a few questions that I've seen getting passed around the Twitter sphere. A couple of questions that I have been sent. Not too many questions today, but just a few to give my take on different things with the team. So, number one, what happened to special teams last week? Not that it was bad, but all of a sudden the New England Patriots had better returns than most of the other opponents the Packers have faced this year. The special teams that was trending up in such a dramatic way suddenly was average, slightly below on coverage and returns. And I think there's two big reasons for that. One, you are going against the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick is a defensive mastermind. The thing that he probably doesn't get enough credit for is actually his coaching of special teams. The New England Patriots are consistently one of the top teams in the NFL at special teams. He's a genius at it. I would never expect the Packers at this point in the rebuild to be as good as the Patriots at special teams, and we saw that. But I think the other thing that made a really big difference was Rudy Ford. Rudy Ford played dramatically less coverage snaps, and I mean special teams coverage, because he was filling in for Amos on defense. And boy, did they miss him. Shamar Jean-Charles, amongst others, took the snaps that Ford then vacated, and it kind of looked like last year. It just didn't have the aggression, the driving down, you're pushing through the blockers with purpose. Man on a mission, like we've talked about with Down Levitt, with Rudy Ford. Shamar Jean-Charles did fine. Which is exactly what the Packers special teams always kind of did. They got blocked. They didn't have that drive, that passion, that fire to break right through the blockers, like Rudy Ford does. And without Ford on teams, we notice the difference. And that leads me to believe that Ford, even though he filled in very well at safety 3, if Amos can't go, are we going to see Ford play as extensively on defense as we did? I kind of doubt it. It may be a switching off of people. Or maybe Ford will play that much on defense, but he'll retain his special teams role because this week they'll be ready for it. I don't know, something's going to give here because Ford has proved just how valuable he is as a flyer or gunner on special teams. We see the difference that it makes now. And I don't think the Packers are going to be willing to take a step back in the special teams department. Not with how they've been trending, not with how they've been emphasizing it. So we'll see what comes of it. Next question. Saw this one passed around a lot, especially today. How long will Aaron Rodgers play for? How many years do we have left before this salt and pepper fox decides to hang it up? And you know, my answer to that has kind of been the same ever since he returned this offseason. I don't think it's long. You know, when he very first signed that contract, a lot of people guessed, all right, well, we got him 2 years for sure. Contract looks like 3. I think if they win it all this year, I think he's done. I could so see him riding off into the sunset. I could see him riding off either way. And the truth is, I'm not sure he knows at this point. Pair that with the fact that anyone guessing is probably going to be wrong because he doesn't know and because Aaron Rodgers is, as Mark Murphy said, a complicated fella. He probably changes by the day. And what really brought this up today was the fact that Rodgers was asked about that today, was asked about if the development of Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, other youth movements on this team, if their development may convince him to stick around a little bit longer. And he answered, well, retirement is based on a lot of things, personnel, how I'm doing, physical, but you have to take into account the personnel around you. It's basically paraphrasing how he ended that answer. The wheels are a-turning in that man's head. Either way, I don't think it's long. I don't think we have Rodgers for 3 to 5 years. I think it's this year or next. I just don't see him much beyond that. Now for our penultimate question. How can the Packers best stop Saquon Barkley? The New York Giants have, by some metrics, the number 1 rushing offense in the National Football League. Even if their mobile quarterback is somewhat debilitated, Saquon Barkley is back. That injury problem of last year, the woes that he's faced in his past, they're all gone. He's back, and he's running really, really well. And how are the Packers going to bring him down when they could not stop Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson? Commit to it. That's the answer. How long did we have to wait in last week's game against the Patriots, even against the third-string quarterback, for us to ditch the too-high safety look, move to cover 1, and then start going after the run? Almost similar to how they played Tampa Bay initially. Flood the lanes, bring down the running back, attack the line of scrimmage. Don't be passive and allow them to push you back, to bend, but then not break in the red zone. Yeah, the Giants have the number 1 rushing attack in the league. You were supposed to be a top 5 defense. Act like it. You're going against the Giants, who annually have not been a good team for a while. They are not going to have many receivers because it's not looking good for Kenny Galladay. It's not looking good for Richie James. It's not looking good for Wan'Dale Robinson. Takes him down to Kadarius Toney, who's barely played this year. I started out the year with him in fantasy. I know. There's limitations there. Again, the Packers are going against a lot of limitations in the offense that they're going against. So stop being terrified that they're going to beat you over the top. I get it. By playing over the top, you can mitigate how large of a play the offense can make. You're banking on them doing more and more plays, which inevitably leads to more and more screw-ups. I understand that that's the philosophy. But there's no reason why you have to do that going against the Giants when you're going against a running back who can beat you on his own. Get a little Belichickian and shut down what they do best. Make them beat you with their secondary weapons. And all of this naturally goes in to the final question of the day, the last thing that I'm going to cover. Who in this Packers team has the most to prove almost a quarter of the way through the season? And there's a few different players you could go with. Devondre Campbell certainly came to mind. See if he could get back up to his all-pro status. Jair Alexander came to mind to be a true number one shutdown again. A couple players in the offense came to mind. Hell, even Aaron Rodgers. But number one in my mind is Joe Barry. When Joe Barry came on last year, all of a sudden the defense started making plays. Guys were talking about being more free than they were under Pettin. Right? That they were able to fly around a bit more. They were so aggressive. They tackled so well. Joe Barry had all of this energy tackling people in the practice room or in the coach's room and all this nonsense about pure, just this adolescent energy that was spreading through the defense. Then we got into training camp this year and it was intense, right? Like we were hearing reports every single day about how the defense was so aggressive, flying so fast, just bewildering Aaron Rodgers in this offense. And now we're into the regular season, and what do we keep on doing? Having our corners play 8 to 10 yards off the ball, playing too high safety, not really ever blitzing, ever. It doesn't make sense. It's beginning to feel like Joe Barry is a lot like Dom Capers, is a lot like Mike Pettin. And that here, we have supplied you with all of these pieces. Your job as the coordinator is to put them in their best positions to succeed. And then he gets stuck in a system, does the system, and then we have lackluster results. I want to see Joe Barry release the reins, release these athletes to go make their plays. Put Darnell Savage in the star role where he belongs, rather than playing some high safety where he's got a decision-making open field tackle. That's not him. It's never been him. Let him play closer to the line in the star position. Put him in a position where he's going to succeed the best. Rasul Douglas, as has been noted by a lot of people, is much more natural on the outside than playing nickel corner like they're trying to force. Let Rasul play on the outside. When Jair comes back, where does he go? Well, against San Francisco, he was locked down in the slot. With the physical tools that he has and the speed and the agility that he has, he can be very Charles Woodson-esque in that slot, nickel, star, whatever you want to call it. And then when he goes to the outside, you can put Darnell Savage there. Like, you've got all of these pieces to do really cool things. And we heard so much when Joe Barry got hired on about the importance of the star role, that they were going to have to go sign somebody just to play that role. Or Darnell Savage was going to switch there full time. Or like, there are all these questions about the star role. And now we're in year 2. The defense is passive despite all of this talent. And we never, ever, ever hear about it anymore. If you're Joe Barry and looking at the philosophy of this defense, who is the defense built around? You've got your superstar on the edge in Rashawn Gary. You've got Preston Smith who's playing lights out. Kenny Clark is doing a great job on the D-line. But who's your wild card? That's what the star role is supposed to be. And we seemingly have abandoned it. So who's got something to prove? And I still support him. I think the changes he made last year were great. I think he can be great, but something is missing. Some spark that they got to get back. And it all starts Sunday in London. So, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. These are my thoughts on this beautiful Wednesday. If you are in Wisconsin, it's a beautiful day outside today. I hope you get out there. I don't know what the weather's supposed to be tomorrow, but if you're in Wisconsin, get outside today. It's a beautiful day. We don't have a ton of these left before it starts getting colder and colder. And if you're traveling to London for the game, oh man, have the time of your life. I am insanely jealous of the pictures that I'm already seeing from people who are there. Have the time of your life and yell and scream for the green and gold like you've never done before. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I hope you are having an absolutely great day. And as always, go Pack Go.